Think of something you once wanted so badly it kept you up at night. A person, a job, a house, a car, a number in a bank account, a version of your life that felt just out of reach. You wanted it with your whole body, and then one day you got it. And here is the strange part, not the disappointment, the speed, how quickly the wanting drained out of the thing the moment it became yours. Within weeks, sometimes within hours, the prize you would have traded years for just sat there, quietly ordinary, while your attention had already drifted to the next thing you didn't have yet. We tell ourselves this is about that particular object. It wasn't the right house, the right job, the right person, but the pattern is too clean to be an accident. The wanting almost never survives the having. So here is the question hiding underneath your whole life. Why do we seem built to crave precisely what we cannot have, and to stop craving it the moment we can? There's an old idea that forbidden fruit tastes sweeter. We usually hear it as a warning, but look at it as a description of how desire actually works. The fruit isn't sweeter because of anything inside the fruit. It's sweeter because it's forbidden. Take away the rule. Leave the same fruit sitting there freely available, and the sweetness quietly evaporates. Which means the thing you wanted may never have been the thing at all. Start with the most measurable piece, because it's the least mysterious. In 1966, the psychologist Jack Brehm described what he called reactance. The idea is simple. When you believe you are free to have or do something, and that freedom is suddenly threatened or taken away, you don't just feel annoyed. You want the lost option more than you did before it was lost. The closing of the door makes the room behind it precious. This is why scarcity works on us so reliably. Limited time, limited supply, only a few left. None of those phrases tell you anything about whether the thing is good. They tell you it's about to be unavailable, and that alone makes your hand reach for it. Marketers have known this for a century. The restriction itself manufactures the want. Notice what this means for how you make decisions. A huge amount of what feels like desire is really just the fear of a closing door. You don't want the thing, you want to not lose the option. And the proof is what happens after you secure it. The want, which felt like it came from deep inside you, simply switches off. It was never really about the object. It was about the threat of not being able to have it. Now there is a famous version of this for love. In 1972, researchers studied couples and reported that when parents interfered and tried to keep two people apart, the couple's love seemed to intensify. They named it, of course, the Romeo and Juliet effect. The obstacle, the story went, feeds the fire. It's a beautiful idea. It's also one that later researchers have struggled badly to reproduce. When the study was revisited with larger groups, the effect mostly vanished. If anything, disapproval tended to correspond with worse relationships, not more passionate ones. So the simple story that obstacles make love stronger doesn't really hold. Which tells us the pull of the unattainable is coming from somewhere deeper than just resistance. Reactance is real, but it's only the surface. To go deeper, you have to consider an unsettling possibility. That desire by its very nature has no object at all. We treat desire like an arrow pointing at a target. You want the person, the price, the place. But what if desire isn't an arrow pointing at anything? What if it's just the pointing itself, a permanent reaching that grabs onto one target, and when that target is captured, simply lifts off and reaches for the next? You were never chasing the thing. You were the chasing, wearing the thing as a costume. This was in a stranger and more radical form. The insight of the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. Lacan argued that desire is not a relation to an object, It's a relation to a lack. There is a gap at the center of being human, opened up early in life, and we spend the rest of our years trying to fill it. We attach the gap to objects, this person, this achievement, this purchase, and we become convinced that getting it will close the hole. But the hole was never about the object. So, the moment you possess the thing, the lack quietly detaches and floats to the next candidate. Lacan even had a name for this elusive cause of desire, a little placeholder for the thing that is always missing. The point was that it has no fixed form. It can wear any face, and it can never ever be caught because catching it was never the point. The reaching is the point. That sounds like a sentence to permanent dissatisfaction. But there's one more layer, and it's the one that should make you most uncomfortable because it asks whether the desire was even yours to begin with. Here's a question almost no one stops to ask: that thing you want so badly, how do you actually know you want it? Trace it back. Often underneath, you'll find a person, someone who had it or wanted it or would be impressed that you got it. We imagine our desires rise up from inside us, pure and original. But a lot of them were handed to us by someone we were quietly measuring ourselves against. This was the life's work of the thinker René Girard. He called it mimetic desire, and he insisted that the belief in our own original desire is what he named the romantic lie. We don't desire objects directly, he argued. We desire them through a model. Someone who's wanting or who's having makes the object glow. Desire is triangular. There's you, there's the object, and there's the other person who taught you, usually without either of you noticing that the object was worth wanting. And this is why the unattainable is so intoxicating. A thing that's out of reach is almost always a thing other people are reaching for too. Its very unavailability is a signal that it's valued, that there's competition, that a model somewhere wants it. We read scarcity as proof of worth. The closed door doesn't just frustrate us, it tells us someone else wishes they were inside. So put the three together and the architecture of longing comes into view. Reactance makes the closing door precious. Lack means we were never really chasing the object, only the reaching itself. And mimicry means even the target was, half the time, borrowed from someone else. No wonder having kills wanting. We build the wanting out of distance, lack, and other people's eyes, and possession removes all three at once. This is why getting the thing so often feels like a small death. You didn't just acquire an object, you collapsed the distance that made it desirable, filled the lack you'd pinned on it, and stopped competing for it. Everything that generated the longing is gone. The instant you win. The emptiness you feel isn't a sign you chose wrong. It's the natural sound of a desire that has nothing left to reach for. Now, you could take all of this as a verdict. That satisfaction is impossible. That we're hamster wheels dressed up as people, forever wanting and never arriving. And plenty of thinkers have stopped exactly there. But notice what the architecture actually gives you once you can see it. It gives you a question you can ask in the moment before you spend your life on the chase. Whose desire is this? Trace the wanting back to its model and ask whether you actually want the thing or whether you've just inherited someone else's hunger and called it your own. Half the prizes we ruin ourselves for turn out under that light to belong to somebody else. And it gives you something gentler too. If the reaching is permanent, if the lack is not a defect in you but the very engine of being alive, then you can stop treating it as a problem to be finally solved. You were never going to fill the hole. No one is. The ache that you can't have everything is the same ache that gets you out of bed, that makes you curious, that keeps you reaching toward a world that's bigger than you. It's not a wound, it's a pulse. So maybe the goal was never to finally get what you can't have. Maybe it's to notice the machinery while it's running, to feel the pull of the closed door and ask calmly, is there anything actually behind it or just the fact that it's closed? To feel the wanting and ask whose face is hiding inside it. Because the people who suffer most under desire aren't the ones who want too much. They're the ones who never once questioned where the wanting came from. And the strange freedom on the other side of all this isn't getting everything you crave. It's being able to look at the thing just out of reach, understand exactly why it glows, and decide with open eyes whether it's worth reaching for at all.